that the amplitude of this signal is uh, somewhere around here, and the amplitude here will be halved on both the sides. So that's a very fundamental property of Fourier transform. So the spikes are present here. Now, in this second signal, what I have done is I have again constructed it in the same way by using the same ingredients, the signal 1, signal 2, 3, and 4. But I have not added them all together for all the times, as in this case. What I have done is for this portion, I have taken the signal with frequency 5. After this, I have taken the signal with frequency 4, then signal with frequency 3, and then signal with frequency 2. So the frequency in these four regions is now different, right? Here, this signal had all frequencies 5, 4, 3, 2 at all possible times. Means that sinusoidal, which was infinite in extent, those four sinusoidals were added all together, and you got this blue signal. However, in this particular signal, same sinusoidals have been added, but they were flipped in terms of time, and then they were added. Right? So you got this kind of signal. And an interesting point to note here is when you took the Fourier transformation of this particular signal, you got the exact same spectrum that you were getting for this original signal, right? So let me zoom it for you. Let us check whether that is true or not. Yeah. So you're getting the spikes at 2, 3, 4, and 5 here. So that is the exact same spectrum that you have got for the original one. Now, does that mean that Fourier transform is not uniquely invertible? No, it's not the case. So the only point that I'm trying to make here is Fourier family of transformations are valid only for stationary signals. For non-stationary signals, they will give results which will be similar to or exactly same as the stationary signal. So just by looking at the frequency domain spectrum, you cannot tell which of the signals was the original signals, right? So in this Fourier transform, one can ask a question: which kind of frequency is my signal having? So does my signal have a frequency of 2? So by looking at the Fourier transform either here or here, just by neglecting these two for the time being, if you look at these two images only, and if I ask this question, is a signal frequency 2 present in my signal? So the answer will be yes, because from here you can read that there is a spike which is present at 2, and so on and so forth here. So this question can be answered. But if I ask a question that where is the frequency of 2 present in my signal? So this question cannot be answered just by looking at the frequency domain representations. However, if you see the time domain representations for the first signal, you will see that it is present for the last quarter of the signal. However, for the first signal, it was present everywhere. But just by looking at the frequency domain representation, you cannot have this information. That's what we mean by loss of localization in Fourier transformation, right? So now this has a manifestation in two dimensions also. If your image is noisy, but the noise is localized, sometimes it happens that we have suppose a X-ray scan, and we have kept that X-ray scan in a packet, and that packet has been kept for 2 months, and the doctor says that bring that packet after 2 months, I will have a new X-ray scan, and then we will compare both of two packets, right? So because of keeping that in packet, that original sheet has got some noise because of scratching, etc. But that noise is localized. So if you take the Fourier transform of that particular image and try to apply a low pass filter or a frequency selective filter, it will remove that frequency from everywhere inside your image. And that's what we do not want. We need to have a transform which will tell us what frequency is present in my signal, which Fourier transform also does. And it should also tell us that where is that frequency present in my signal. So that is
Ma'am?
also one of the important things that we are going to address today, and we will see that in the final results this will have
రేపు
greater
చేస్తాం. రేపు
good
లాస్టా?
results we are going to obtain, right? So now this was the
కూర్చోండి మేడం.
motivation for studying this
అది
multi-resolution
దుమ్ము వస్తూ ఉంది.
analysis. And now let us have a look at, first of all, this time frequency duality, right? On the screen you see here a sinusoidal signal. In the first tile, you see a
మ్యాట్ వర్క్ మనం
sinusoidal
చేసుకుంటూ
signal,
వెళ్ళిపోదాము
right?
లేకపోతే.
And this sinusoidal signal, it has a frequency of 20, That is, it makes 20 number of cycles in 1 second. So from 0 to
దాంట్లో అది అసైన్మెంట్
1 second, you can count that it has got 20
దీంట్లో
peaks here.
తీసుకోండి
And
తీసుకోండి.
if you take the double-sided Fourier transform of this, of course, there will be spikes at 20 and minus 20, and the amplitude of these will be zero point 0.5 and zero point 0.5 because the amplitude here was 1. So this is what we are familiar with from our Fourier transformation study. Now, the important point to note here is if you clip this signal by half, you take only this signal and you try to take the Fourier transform of only this portion, not the portion which you have clipped off. You try to take the Fourier transform of only this particular signal, then this frequency is again same. It has got the frequency of 20, but the spectrum will not remain like this. The spectrum will change. The change
యాడ్
that
ఆన్
you will
కోర్సెస్
notice
అంటే
are two.
మీనింగ్ ఏంటంటే
First
నీ
is
జాబ్
the
రావడానికి ఏదైనా
sharp
ఎడిషనల్
spike
స్కిల్స్
that you
ఇస్తే
were seeing earlier
అది
will
యాడ్ ఆన్
become
కోర్స్.
broadened. So its
అది
width
కాకపోతే
will thicken
యాడ్ ఆన్
and
కోర్సెస్
there
వేరే
will be some
పర్పస్ కోసం
side
పెట్టారు, అది
lobes which
అది
will
నేను
be
ఆలోచిస్తున్నా.
introduced in this. So we are talking about only
ఆల్రౌండ్
magnitude
డెవలప్మెంట్లో
spectrum here,
దేనికో
not the
వచ్చున్నాయి
phase
అవి,
spectrum.
అంతే
So in the
కదా.
magnitude spectrum, you will see that these lobes will become thicker as well as these side lobes will be introduced. If you further,
ఇక్కడ రాసేసుకోండి, ఇక్కడ
clip your
రాసుకోండి,
signal,
ఇక్కడ రాసుకోండి.
then
ఏం
this
రాశాను ఇక్కడ?
thickening will also become more and these side lobes will be introduced more in number, right? They will also
ఇక్కడ
become
రాసుకోండి.
thickened. The third thing that you will notice is earlier the magnitude here was zero point 0.5. As you clip this signal in time domain, the amplitude does not remain zero point 0.5. It has become, I think, zero point 0.3 here, and it has become 0.10 or so. I mean, 0.20 maybe here. So this is significantly less than zero point 0.5 that it was earlier. So three phenomena are happening as you try to clip your signal. One is reduction in amplitude, other is thickening of these bands, and introduction of new bands is the third phenomenon. So what is this? What happens is if you are having a signal which is wide enough, ideally this is not a sinusoidal signal. A sinusoidal signal is infinite in its extent, but we cannot synthesize an infinite signal in computer. So that is why we take a large enough signal. And if we take a large enough signal, we will get a perfect spectrum, right? Not perfect, 100% perfect, but a good looking spectrum which we see in theory books, right? If you try to clip your signal, that is, if you try to pinpoint in time domain, now this is a technical term. If you try to pinpoint in time domain, that means you are looking at only small portion of your entire signal, then your frequency resolution will become poor. What do we mean by frequency resolution? Sharpness of spikes in frequency, it will become poor. You can see that it has been broadened. Earlier, you can precisely say that the frequency of 20 is present in my signal, but here you will say that the frequencies around 20 are present in my signal, right? They might be from say minus 18 to plus 22. So those kind of frequencies are present in my signal. If you further pinpoint in time, your frequency resolution will become further poorer. However, if you if you try to pinpoint in frequency, that means if you try to take perfect spikes in frequency domain, then your time resolution will be poor because that way you need to have an infinite signal in time. So the resolution is very poor because you have the entire signal. You cannot pinpoint there. So that's what we mean by time frequency duality, and that will play an important part when we will try to study scales. Right. So now let me show you this third code, which is actually a solution to our problem of this Fourier transformation. For this kind of signal, I mean, for a signal which has this frequency of 5, 4, 3, and 2 in different sections, we had a Fourier transform which looks similar to uh, a signal which is an stationary equivalent of this. I mean, a signal which has been comprised of adding sinusoids of frequency 5432 for all the possible times. Here, those portions are clipped off and they are taken separately. Now, uh, instead of taking the Fourier transform of the entire signal, now what we are going to do, we are going to take this small window, and for this small window, we will take Fourier transform. So obviously we will get a frequency of 5 because for this small window, if you take Fourier transform, the frequency of 5 will be there because only the signal which corresponds to frequency 5 is here. Now you will shift this small window forward and you will get again a frequency of 5. Then you will shift this window one step ahead and so on and so forth. So when it reaches to this region of 4, you will only see frequencies of 4 appearing there. So that way, instead of having a one-dimensional Fourier transform, you will have a two-dimensional Fourier transform for a one-dimensional signal. And that's what we mean by short time Fourier transform. Instead of taking that Fourier transform for the entire time, you take short times here. This window size is small, and for that you take the Fourier transform of the signal. Let me show you how it looks. First of all, let me show you the top view of that. So here you can see that this is a double-sided spectrum, and here you have got the midpoint. This is the zero frequency. Do not look at these scales. This scale has not been marked properly. This is the frequency which is zero frequency. And on this side you have positive frequencies, on this side you have negative frequencies, right? So as you see, uh, if you only see the positive side of the signal, so it has got, frequencies which were 5, 4, 3, and 2. So when the signal began at time t equal to 0, it had frequency of 5, then 4, then 3, and then 2. So you see that the frequency is here and the time is on this particular scale. So when the signal began, when the time was 0, if you only see the right side of this particular graph, the frequency was highest. It was 5. It was around 5. This scale is improper. The top scale is improper. So the highest frequency was present there. When the time started to increase, you had a frequency of 4 and then 3 and then 2. Right? So time is increasing in this direction and you are reading frequencies here. So there are these 4 different frequencies that you have got. Right? Now, you can see that here you can answer that kind of question. If I ask that question, where is my frequency of 4 present in my signal? So you will see that this is corresponding to the frequency of 4 and this is present at time duration this to this. So probably in the second half of my signal, the frequency of 4 is present. So which you can confirm from the time domain representation also. So that's present here, right? So this way, short time Fourier transform is able to answer a question of time. What kind of frequency? Sorry, what frequency is present in my signal, and where is it present? Right? It has started to answer that kind of question, but still there is a problem. The problem is the selection of this particular window size. The selection of window size. I mean, uh, the window size here is debatable. I prefer to have my window pinpointed, right? But what if somebody takes a window which is little thicker? If my window is pinpointed, then the graph that I got is this. If my window size is thickened, so let me just make this window size thick. Instead of taking a width as 3, let me take it as 30. And then let me show you the graph. How will the graph look like? So this is my original signal, and now you see here the window size that I have taken is huge, and you can see that it is overlapping with these two signals. So the kind of spectrum that I will get is this. Now you see here, those stripes that you were able to see for a particular frequency have been thinned out. That is a good thing. But then now the two stripes, it is this particular stripe and this particular stripe, they have got some common overlap area. Earlier, this overlap area was not there. Earlier, there was one stripe for 5. After that completed, there was a stripe for 4. And after that completed, there was a stripe for 3 here, right? But here, as soon as I uh, as soon as I decreased my time resolution, I made my time resolution poorer. I took a larger signal in my window. The frequency resolution has become good. That is, I mean, these stripes have been become pinpointed. You can precisely read the frequency. Earlier, these were thick, and now you can see they have become thin. But the my point is the time resolution has become poorer because there is a common portion between two stripes, which is not there in the original signal. So if you want to see this in 3D, what do I mean by this is, let me just show it to you for 3 first. I mean a window width of 3 pixels or 3 symbols first. So this was the case. I mean, if this is the window width, then the second graph that we saw was this. Here you can see that these are thick stripes. And if you try to read it on this particular scale, frequency scale, you will have a range of frequencies instead of a single frequency. And if you want to see the 3D view of the same thing, you can see that this is the 3D view, right? So the same has been plotted from top in the previous diagram. So it was this view. But if you want to see the 3D view, this is this. And if you want to compare it with the Fourier transform that we have already learned, you can arrange it in this particular format, right? So this is a double-sided Fourier transform, right? So if you look from this particular point, if you bifurcate the spectrum from the center, then this is the right half portion, which has got frequencies of 5, 4, 3, and 2. And here -2, then, accordingly, the frequencies have increased on the negative side. So this was what Fourier transform does. But when we bring out the details of short time Fourier transform, the spectrum was like this. And now here you can see that these stripes were not overlapping with each other, right? When the window size was small and time domain. So what happened was the time resolution is good. I mean, these are separated in time scale. You can see that this is the time scale. These stripes or flaps are separated in time domain. After one flap stops, other flap begins. However, the stripes are thick here, right? If you see the top view here, these stripes are thick here. If I increase, if I increase the window size in time domain, you see what happens here. Yeah, here I have increased the window size in time domain. The top view is also shown to you. I mean, let me just show you the top view. The top view is this. The stripe size has thinned, but now these two stripes have started to overlap. If you see this thing in 3D view, it will give you a crystal clear picture of what's happening. So you can see that the stripe size has perfectly thinned. These are thin stripes. You can now precisely read this frequency. However, you can see that these two flaps have started to overlap. So short time Fourier transformation was somehow able to answer the question of what frequency is present and where it is present, but still it is not able to answer that perfectly because of the time frequency duality that we have seen. I mean, if you take the window size according to your wish, you will take it thin, I will take thick, then the results will be different and there will be a problem in interpretation. So to again cope up with this problem, let us understand this problem formally, and that's what we call as problem of scale. It is related to the time frequency duality only. Now, here I have got a signal which has got two different frequencies. One is a higher frequency to begin with, and the second part, it has got a lower frequency here, right? And this is the small window which I am correlating with this complete signal. I am just convolving, or in other words, correlating this particular signal, because anyway this window is symmetric. So whether we call it convolution or correlation, that's one and the same thing. So I'm trying to convolve this particular window with this entire signal. I will get this result because it is very thin. So you can see that the high frequency component and the low frequency component, both of them are preserved. And in the spectrum, you can see that high and low frequency, both component appears. If I try to make my window size thick, this higher frequency component will start to diminish in amplitude and lower frequency component will remain as it is. And this is also reflected in the frequency domain spectrum. If the window size is sufficiently thick, such as it encounters one complete period, then you can see that this complete high frequency component has been gone and low frequency component still remains. So the take-home message from this particular slide is this window size means the scale. If the scale is low, then both high and low frequencies are present. And if the scale is high, that means this window width is high, then in that case only low frequencies are present. So I mean, if I am working at working with the image at lower scale images, then I should preserve the high frequency components. Why? Because at higher scales they won't be available. So at lower scales, I should preserve the high frequency component, or I should work with the higher frequency component because they are present at that particular scale only. And at the higher scale, since higher frequency components will be removed out, so I should be working with the lower frequency component. So that's what we mean by this particular slide. And why have I told you this? This is to decide the window size. I mean, instead of taking the uniform window size as we were taking in short time Fourier transform, when we will talk about images, if the image is at low scale, then we will be working with higher frequency components because at low scales, high frequency components are present. And when the image is at high scale, then we will be working with the low frequency components because higher frequencies will be removed there. And this is very crystal clear from this particular slide. And what do we mean by scale of an image? By scale of an image, we mean resolution. It is inverse of resolution. So in a way, 1 upon resolution is somehow related to scale, right? So a low scale will mean higher resolution. And you can now correlate the things. If our image is at very good resolution, sharp details will also be visible there, right? So if our image is at low scale, that means it is at higher resolution, and that time the image will contain both higher and lower frequency components. However, when the image is at very high scale, that means it is at low resolution, then at that time definitely the higher frequency components will be lost there. So the details that image contain at a particular scale or equivalently resolution differ. And that's why while we try to remove noise from that particular image, we need to take care of the scale also. Because at every scale, if we apply the low pass filter and we try to remove the noise, then it will snatch some information also, right? So that should not happen. So this is the motivation behind this wavelet transformation. And let us see some intuition about this wavelet transformation here. And in wavelet transformation, again, I have taken this same signal, 5, 4, 3, and 2 frequencies are there. And in the second graph, what we have done is, for the same signal, instead of talking about now frequencies, we are talking about scales. And here we have got your translation, or this means time. Time or translation are the same thing. So when we talk about wavelet transformation, we talk about time and scale. So this is translation or time, and this is your scale. We do not talk about frequencies here. So in the beginning, we said that the frequency was 5, then it was 4, then it was 3, and then it was 2. So as you go higher in scales, you can see that these lower frequencies are preserved. I mean, the red color means that it is present there. Red or yellow colors means it is present there. Our blue color means absence of the signal. So in the wavelet transform, you can see that if you bring your one-dimensional signal to higher scales, then low frequency components, they exist at every scale, whether it is lower scale or higher scale, they are present there. But at lower scales, you have got higher frequency components, which will diminish at higher scales. If you say the same thing in terms of resolution, then at higher, then at scales which are lower, which means resolution which is higher. So at higher resolution, you have got both high frequency components and low frequency components, which is good, and as well as mid frequency components. But if you go to higher scales, that means lower resolution or a blurred out version of an image, there all the high frequency and mid-range components will be lost and only low frequency components will be present. Their amplitude will also become somewhat less as compared to their original value. So this thing we keep in mind while we design wavelet transformation. So this is the top view of that, I mean 3D view of that. So the same diagram that I had shown you, this is the 3D view of that. Now, let us now move on to this continuous wavelet transform, right? So in continuous wavelet transform, if you had the same signal, I mean, I am not taking this signal only, which has two frequencies, one high frequency at the beginning of the signal and one low frequency at the ending of the signal. So the wavelet transform of that will look like that. So as we have discussed, at lower scales, we will only be dealing with higher frequencies. So you can see that these are the, higher frequency components that are present in our signal, because in the beginning, we know that from 0 to half of this signal, the higher frequency components were present, and lower frequency components were supposed to be present at every scale. But we are inside wavelet transform, so we are only taking them or taking care of them at higher scales. They were also there at lower scales, but by selecting an appropriate window size, we have neglected it there. What I mean to say is, instead of taking a rectangular window, I have taken a window which looks something like this. Now these are wavelets. So earlier I was taking a rectangular window to take Fourier transform. So instead of taking rectangular window, I might take a window of this form. This is called as a Haar window. This is called as Shannon or sync window. This is Debauchees 4. This is Debauchees 20. So there are various wavelength shapes. How are these wavelengths defined? So there are certain principles behind declaring some window shape as a wavelet, and some of them might be orthogonality or orthonormality to begin with. Then the energy of these wavelets should be zero if you integrate them entirely. So there are some properties satisfying which a window function becomes a wavelet function. So instead of box function, if you select any of this kind of wavelet function, the lower frequency component now will be only marked at higher scale. So this is what we mean by wavelet transformation. Now this wavelet transform is highly useful. Now if you ask the question, what frequency components are present in my signal and where they are present, both of the questions can be answered, right? So when you are looking for the low frequency components, you will be working at higher scale or lower resolution. So these are the low frequency components and they are present at this to this time duration. So this question can be answered here, right? And now if you want to see the top view of this is the top view, right? So the height will tell you which frequency component is strong and which frequency component is not strong. So this is the fundamental of your wavelet transformation. And now we are going to apply this knowledge into our this thing, image denoising, right? So wavelet transform can be done in continuous as well as discrete mode, and we will be considering the discrete mode only. The diagram that you see on the screen, I will first show you how denoising is done in one-dimensional signal, and then we will discuss it with the two-dimensional case. So here you see I have got a signal. This is I'm calling as my original signal, and to original signal I have added some noise. So this is my original signal plus noise. Now in this particular illustration, I am just showing you that you can bring this original signal to one scale lower. Then from that signal, you can bring that signal again to one more lower scale. Then to the process signal, you can again bring it to the lower scale. So we will bring our signal from one scale to multiple other scales, and every scale we will try to remove some noise, right? With some something that we will see later. So in this particular slide, I have just shown you an original signal which has got some noise, and you have broken it into two parts. This is the approximation coefficient and this is the detail coefficient. Through wavelet transformation, you have just broken your original signal into this signal and this particular signal. I mean, your original signal, this one, is a summation of these two parts. This is like the low pass filtered version, and this is high pass filtered version. If you again add these two signals, you will get the original signal, which I have anyway done in the final signal. I have added these two signals and I have got the exact original signal with noise that I was having earlier. Now, uh, if you suppose you have got this particular signal, I mean, this is what we mean by approximation coefficient, and this is similar to the low pass filtered version. And this is what we mean by the detailed coefficient. So this is similar to the higher frequency version of your signal. So you can also note a point that here the scale was from 0 to 5. However, here the scale is from 0 to 2.5. I mean, half of this 5. So what happens is when you bring the signal from one scale to a lower scale, what will happen there is the number of samples should also be half, because you have lost half of the information. That is why this is a stretched version of the signal that I have plotted to be able to see the similarity between these two. Otherwise, the original length of this is half. So this is just one scale of decomposition, right? What is our plan? Our plan is to decompose the signal at multiple levels and then see what happens to the signal. Now, what we have got here is the original signal. We have added some noise to it. This is fine. And I have then broken the original signal into its approximation coefficient CA and detail coefficient CD at level 1. So this is level 1 decomposition. I have got two signals out of one original signal. Then I have taken the approximation coefficient and broken it into further two sections. This is your approximation coefficient at level 2 and detail coefficient at level 2. Then I have taken this approximation coefficient at level 2 and broken it into further two signals. This is PA3 and this is EB3, right? So one might ask the question, why are we not breaking this higher frequency signal into two parts? So the reason is the same. As soon as you move into the scale, only the lower frequency components will be preserved. That is why we prefer to break them, not the higher frequency components, right? Now, an important point to note here is, right, you see the, this detail coefficients at various levels. What happens here is the first is very, very noisy. The second contains some noise, but it has got some dominant peaks. And these peaks, they correspond to some important events in our signal. If you see here, there is a sharp change here. There is a sharp change here. So these two peaks that you see here, this one and this one, they correspond to these two regions. I mean, one is a positive change, another is a negative change. That is why you have got these two different polarities here. Now, if you apply a low pass filter to the signal uniformly without breaking it into different levels, what will happen is these details will also be lost uniformly. But we do not want to lose them uniformly. If you further go to third level decomposition, you can see that there are some dominant peaks here and they correspond to some details in your signal, and we do not want to lose them. So breaking your signal into various levels, even at higher frequencies, you have got some important information. Noise is usually present at higher frequencies, that is true, but the dominant structures that are present there, we do not want to lose them. And when we want to apply denoising, the denoising should be such that you can take the maximum peak of this particular signal, and whatever amplitude is less than the maximum peak by say 20%, you can suppress that to zero. I mean, these all smaller peaks will be suppressed to zero, but these dominant peaks will remain as it is. So that's how these sharp details in your signal will be preserved. That's what we want to do. Because once you have broken your signal into various levels of decomposition, then you can reconstruct back your signal. You can combine these two signals and make this signal again. You can combine these two signals and make this signal again, and so on and so forth. You will get the original signal. But the point is, if you apply different filtering strategy at different scales, then these details which start to appear in your original image, they will be preserved throughout. That is the whole sole idea. Whatever strategy you apply, whether you apply a linear filter like a Gaussian filter or a median filter, which is a non-linear filter, or you apply filtering in time domain or frequency domain, you should apply them at multi-resolution. And for application of these at multi-resolution, you have got soft thresholding as well as hard thresholding. These are the two very basic techniques that are used. I mean, uh, you can just do like this. If this peak is there and you see the signals which are, say, at amplitude values of less than 50% as compared to this peak, you make them all zero. This is called as hard thresholding. You can also do soft thresholding. So in proportion to their amplitude, in proportion to the amplitudes that these signals have got at different points of times, their filtering will be done. I mean, they will be reduced according to that. So if they have got lower amplitudes, the reduction will be great, and if they have got higher amplitudes, the reduction will be low. This is called as soft thresholding, right? So let me show you one example of denoising a signal in one dimension, and then we will finally come to this image example, which is of utmost important interest to us. So this is our original signal. I have mixed some noise into that, and we want to denoise it, right? So this is how I have broken my signal into multiple levels. We have already seen this, and you see that if we go higher into these decomposition levels, then these dominant details are present there. And if you apply a low pass filter uniformly here, these dominant details will be equally lost. We don't want that, right? So I have applied some kind of thresholding here. I have kept these higher level decomposition component as it is, and I have removed these two. That is decomposition, I mean approximation coefficient and detail coefficient. The detail coefficient at level 1, level 2, and have been completely removed. They have been made zero. And from level 3 onwards, I have kept them as it is. You can apply other strategy of soft thresholding and hard thresholding, but let us see what happens after that. That is very interesting phenomena, and that will give us some insights into our final task. So this is our original signal. This was the original signal which was mixed with some noise here, and Now, these are the two denoised signals that you are seeing here. The red one is denoised by wavelet method. The blue one is denoised by using normal low pass filtering. Now, I ask you this question, which of the two signals appears to be better? So now, the first glimpse, you might say that this blue signal is appearing to be smoother. So this might be the best signal, sir. How is this wavelet signal appearing to be best, because it is anyway jittery now also? So my answer to this is, you look at the details in your original signal. You had a sharp transition at this particular point of time from low value to some high value, sharp transition from high value to low value here, right? And similarly, a sharp transition at this particular point, right? So are these transitions first of all preserved in my final results? If that is the case, then I will consider how much jitter has been removed. So you see that in the normal low pass signal, these transitions have been made as gradual. I mean, there is no sharp transition now. This transition has been made as gradual. Earlier, it was a rect signal in this portion. Now it has been made as something else. The transition has been become gradual. That means you have lost this sharper detail. If you were using this signal to start a motor, then you need a sharp change there. But however, due to low pass filtering, in quest of removing noise, you have made it gradual, so your motor will not start, right? So in the wavelet processed signal, if you see here, that change has still been maintained. That sharper change has still been maintained, right? Although there is still jitter present, there is still some kind of jitter which is present here, but then the original details are still preserved. This is very less noisy as compared to the noisy signal, but my original details are preserved. This does not contain any jitter which was introduced due to noise, but my original details are also lost here. So I won't consider this as a noise-free signal. My noise-free signal is this red one, which has been decomposed by, or which has been obtained by using this multi-resolution analysis. And that's why wavelet based filtering or multi resolution filtering is better. Whatever filtering strategy you apply at various scales, it should take things back into consideration that as we move on, as we travel in scale, the high frequency information, it should be retained if it is really high there, right? If there are sharper changes, then at the level of decompositions, they should be preserved. Now let us see the manifestation of this thing in two dimensions, and things will be very clear, right? So I'm showing you one illustration here. Let us just see that first. So this is my original image, right? This is my original image, and I have added some noise to it. So this is my noisy image. You can see that there is some noise in this. I will zoom a portion of this for you, and you can see that this contains now this kind of noise here, right? Earlier in the original image, this region was completely smooth. Now from my original image, I just want to remove this noise. Now, one very trivial way is to use low pass filtering. Another is using multi-resolution analysis. So what I'm doing is I am showing you the results for both. So this is the result which I have obtained after multi-resolution analysis, and this is the result which I have obtained after simple low pass filtering with equivalent filter size. So you can see the result itself. This image has got all the noise clear, still all the details are present. Although contrast has been reduced, which can be increased by post-processing techniques like contrast enhancement and maybe some histogram equalization, but all the details are preserved here. Here, by an equivalent amount of filter, equivalent sized filter, you see that the noise has been completely removed and probably better than this particular region. But you see the complete details are lost. So I do not want this to happen to my medical images, because if you talk about various tumors, then these tumors, they begin as a very small sized tumor inside human body. So if we apply low pass filtering, those details will be removed, and I do not want that to happen. That's why this multi resolution analysis should be used together with some post processing techniques for improving the visibility, etc. So that can be done anyway, because post processing is not the core part of denoising the images, right? And as an intermediate step, you can also figure it out for yourself that this is your original image, and like in Fourier transformation for two-dimensional for images, we had four quadrants instead of single-sided or double-sided Fourier transform. We will here have an approximation coefficient and a horizontal detail coefficient, vertical detail coefficient, and a diagonal detail coefficient. So there will be three diagonal detail coefficient. And as you move in scales, you can see that these high frequency components, or I mean these detail coefficients, they contain some significant structures. If we would not have reduced them, if we would not have decomposed them in various scales, we wouldn't have been able to see this important information, and this will be completely chopped off by applying a simple low pass filter. And that is what we do not want to happen. That is why this multi resolution analysis has been done, and accordingly your noise can be removed by whatever strategy. So this is a general framework for doing that, right? And the difference you can see evidently here. So for medical images, this will be of great help because we want to preserve short, even very minute details there, because anyway by nature these medical images, they contain very less sharp details, and if we apply low pass filters they will be lost easily, because the boundaries of medical images are more or less fuzzy, so whatever sharp detail they have, they need to be present. So that was the whole sole objective of this particular session. I guess I am able to deliver it correctly. So this was all from my side, and I would like to thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present this in front of you. Thank you so much.
Dear participants, are there any questions?
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Who is this?
Sir, Praveen, sir. This is.
Yes, Praveen, please ask your question.
Sir, one small doubt is there. Sir, how to decompose the signal into different bands, sub-bands?
It can be decomposed by applying a simple wavelet transformation in, I mean, you can use wavelet transformation. There you will get approximation and detail coefficient at every level. The formula for wavelet transformation is already there. Once you pass your signal to that, you will be getting your approximation as well as detail coefficient. If you want to further go to next level, you can use the approximation coefficient and break it into approximation and detail coefficient. Then you can further use that approximation coefficient that you have got at that level and further break it into approximation and detail coefficient.
So then when we are decompose the signal into how many levels, sir? If the frequency is decreasing, sir, at that time.
Yeah, you can decompose it into as many levels as you want, but the point is beyond a level, if you try to decompose it, those high frequency details, they will remain the same. So it will also add up to your computational cost if the levels are more than, I guess, 10 or 12. So 7 or 8 levels are fair enough for images. For medical images.
In medical images, sometimes maybe 5 also it's having more information also. First 5.
Yeah, within first 5 you can have most of the information, but 7 and 8 is suggested because that way any possibility of losing details will be obliterated.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, sir.